So there's been a lot of discussion of if and when Joe Biden is going to denounce violence that is taking place in different places around the country. And the Trumpists and Donald Trump himself have focused in a lot on this. Why won't Joe Biden denounce this? Why won't Joe Biden denounce that? Now, before we get to the sort of substance here, which is that Joe Biden did it and a lot of people on the left are furious with him and the right is just simply ignoring it. Does Joe Biden really need to denounce anything in the sense that we currently have violence happening under the leadership of Donald Trump? And even though Donald Trump is trying to insist that violence is what's in store in Biden's America, if you look back at when Biden was vice president, things were relatively calm. And the violence that we are seeing now, to the extent that it exists, is a lot of it is being done by Trump supporters. Of course, not all of it, but it is all happening as Donald Trump is president of the United States. But OK, let's put that, we'll table that argument for now. And let's just say people want Biden to denounce the violence. Well, he did it. Joe Biden did it in a speech in Pennsylvania. And Trumpists are just pretending that he didn't do it. And some of the left is furious. So what I want to discuss with you after we look at the clip is, did this make sense? Let's take a look at what Joe Biden had to say.
Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Violence will not bring change. It will only bring destruction. It's wrong in every way. It divides instead of unites. Destroys businesses, only hurts the working families that serve the community. It makes things worse across the board, not better. No, it's not what Dr. King or John Lewis taught, and it must end.
So on the facts, I agree with Joe Biden here. Rioting is not protesting, looting is not protesting, and setting fires is not protesting in the sense that it will bring productive change. Now, I know that there are people who will respond and say, you don't get to set the terms of what counts as protesting. Okay, well, we'll get to that in a little bit. But the possible folly of Joe Biden doing this is that the right is just pretending he didn't do it. They're continuing to say, why won't Joe Biden denounce violence, even though he's done it? And there's a slice of the left that is absolutely furious with Joe Biden here. Now, I'm not saying it's all the left or a huge portion, but it's certainly a very loud slice of the left, particularly online. And the reason that some on the left are mad at Joe Biden for doing this is they say that he's playing into the idea that it's his supporters who are being violent. The idea being, by Joe Biden coming out and saying, no matter who's doing it, I'm against the violence, it sort of frames it up as Joe Biden acknowledging that it is his supporters being violent and telling them to stop. I think that there are two sides to this. So first of all, I find it completely reasonable and unproblematic that Joe Biden says violence is bad and I'm against it. It's insane that it has to be said, but he said it and he said, no matter who does the violence, I'm against the violence. But the second piece is that it's important to clarify at every opportunity that almost nobody on the left is being violent, that a lot of the violence is provocateurs and right wingers. And I hate to say this, but by and large, the leftists that are being violent are overwhelmingly not people supporting Joe Biden, and often individuals who see Joe Biden as much of a problem or almost as much of a problem as Donald Trump. So if there is a criticism of Joe Biden here, it's that he arguably indirectly or implicitly seems to be acknowledging or conceding that some of his supporters are being violent. And I really don't think that that's the case at all. I've not really seen evidence of that. So I don't believe there's any problem with Joe Biden denouncing violence in principle. I do think it's sort of like when, there's an Islamic terror attack and right wingers start saying, why didn't this individual Muslim person who had nothing to do with it denounce the violence? Well, most people denounce violence implicitly. Most people are against violence. I don't know whether that is even something that should be expected, particularly when Joe Biden isn't in power and there's no evidence that it is his supporters that are doing anything. But what I would like to see more of is Joe Biden aggressively placing the blame where it should be placed? Biden should be saying, or let me go back. There are people saying by doing this, Joe Biden is hinting that he's going to police and limit protests as president and limit free speech. That's not at all what Biden is doing here. And in fact, the Obama-Biden administration had a completely normal relationship with the press. Trump is the one that's authoritarian and dystopian when it comes to a free press. And ultimately, this is a sort of discussion of the Martin Luther King perspective on protests versus the Malcolm X perspective. And one of the things that most resonates with me that Dr. King often said was the problem with going to looting, arson, violence as a form of protest is not whether it's morally defensible. Maybe it is. That's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have. But the small percentage who choose to do it often end up hurting themselves. And when protests go to violence, looting, etc., it very often backfires and hurts the very people that we are trying to help through our activism. This is Martin Luther King's view, and you can extensively find interviews with him on YouTube where he says that. That's my take on it. So on the facts, I do tend to agree with Joe Biden. I think the framing of Biden must denounce, he does, and they just keep saying Biden must denounce as if he didn't do it. That's where it starts to get a little problematic.